Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to do things a little bit differently and I'm going to have a lot more real-time footage available for you guys. So today I'm going to show you how I did this cute little chick cookie jar, and I thought this was very Easter themed. Now the full real-time version of this is available over on my Patreon, but I figured for today's video I would try something a little bit different and try to insert a lot more real-time footage for you guys. This video might be a little bit longer, or I might have to break it up into two different videos. So go ahead and let me know down in the comments below, do you like this style of video better, or do you prefer the more sped up videos? Now, this was done with all watercolor pencils, and I will have a watercolor for beginners series coming out soon, like I did with the watercolor one. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell for that, and let's just get right into today's video. So I tend to start working in sections at a time, and I'm just taking my kneaded eraser and I'm lightening the bottom area of the cookie jar here. And then I always start with my lightest pencil. Now I will be going in at the end and adding some more highlights in using the Inktense block. And I will show you guys that probably in the second video. I think I am going to have to split this up into two videos just because it does take a lot longer to do this style of video. But if you guys like this, then I am certainly willing to do that. And I'm just getting all the highlight areas on the cookie jar right now. And I'm not being very careful how I'm laying this pencil down. So normally when I'm doing my colored pencil pieces, I'm very careful to go in little small oval circles so that it'll blend out much nicer. But with these watercolor pencils, and these are the Albrecht Durer watercolor pencils, I can really be super messy and just scribble these down and they will blend out, as you guys will see later in this video. They blend out so nicely and so smoothly. They are my absolute favorite watercolor pencils. And I'll show you more techniques that we can use when I do the watercolor pencil course for you guys. But I'm just laying this mid-tone color down, getting this down, and then I'll go ahead and blend everything out. Now for this layer, I am using my watercolor brush, and this is the Silver Black Velvet. I think it's a size 8 brush. And when I want a more smooth transition between my watercolor pencils, or if I'm doing a larger area and I don't want to risk getting some lines where like one spot has dried and I'm trying to blend another area, I'll go in with my watercolor brush just because it holds a little bit more water and the area will stay just a little bit more wet and give me time to blend out. So this is a great technique or great brush to use if you're doing larger backgrounds with watercolor pencils. But then as we go into smaller detail areas, you guys will see that I'll actually take a water brush later on and use that for pretty much the rest of the blending. And I always try to start in the light areas again and then work those into the dark areas because it can be kind of easy to drag the darker watercolor pencil into the lighter areas. And then I'm just taking those same colors and I am going to add a little bit more orange to his feet down here. So I'm just putting all those same colors again. Now, one thing I do want to note with this little cookie jar, I found this on either Unsplash or Pixabay, and I loved it right away. However, all of the cookies in the jar were the same yellow cookies. Now, in this video, you're going to see I'll do 2 of the yellow cookies, but in the next video, I'm going to show you how I actually take some fun colors, and I wanted some of the cookies to be a little more Easter themed, so I picked some pinks, some purples, and some blues. And so in the next video, I'll show you guys how I incorporate those colors into the cookies. So it's just to show you, you don't necessarily always have to follow your reference photo to the T. I really liked the yellow color of this chick, but I wanted to change the cookies up because I felt all of it being yellow was just a little bit boring. So you can really have some fun with your pieces. And you guys saw the finished result at the beginning of this video. So, I mean, you can honestly take any colors you want. But now you're seeing me go in with that water brush, and again, I always start from light to dark, and as I start picking up a little bit more of that dark pigment, I just wipe it off onto the paper towel, and this is all in real time, so honestly, as quick as I'm wiping it off, that's enough to get the pigment off of the brush, so I find it a really quick method to blend out as well, especially when I've got all different colors in one area, like those little toes. Now I'll have to go back in and make that even darker, which we will do, but I'm just working on some of the shadow areas on the pot right now. So I'm sort of focusing on those edges where I can see the shadows in the reference picture, and I'm trying to make this bowl shape a little bit more round looking. So that's where I'm trying to focus those shadow areas. And I also want to be mindful not to bring this too much into my highlight area. And then I'm taking one of the pinks that I'm going to use for a pink cookie after, and I'm using this on his cheek. Now, one of the great things that I like about these Albrecht Durer watercolor pencils is they layer up so nicely. So when I go to blend out this layer, the layer beneath of it, because it's been fully blended out, it's not going to disturb as easily and lift or mess up that layer below. So I really like that aspect of these pencils. And I'm just blending this layer out exactly the same way I did the layer before, and I try to drag it and soften those edges a little bit, and then I just use that paper towel to kind of get any of that pigment off my brush when I want to soften the edges out. And I can really push and pull that pigment around where I want it. And I'm trying to keep that top edge of the bowl because there is a highlight right along the top edge, sort of where the cookies are. So I want to try to make sure I don't pull that pigment up too much there. And then I'm just going around and softening his little cheek parts here. I really liked those rosy colored cheeks on this pot, so I wanted to make sure I incorporate it. However, it's not as pigmented as I want it, so I will again go back in and add that in. And you're just seeing me go back in one last time here and add some of those darker oranges and darker browns into his feet. And I want to make sure the little crevices in between his toes get a little bit darker, and that's going to help separate them and make them look more like little feet. And it's got a very strong shadow too coming down, so I want to make sure I get that in. And then the same colors that I've used for the feet, I'm just taking into his little beak area here, and I'm putting those colors in. Now this is quite a small area, and the paper that I'm using here is Strathmore cold pressed, and this is an 8x10. This is becoming one of my favorite papers for watercolor pencils because it's got some cold pressed texture on there, but it's actually quite smooth still for a cold pressed paper, but it still acts like a watercolor cold pressed paper, so you can get a really nice watercolor effect, or if you layer the pencils up enough, you'll get a really nice smooth effect, like if you were using hot pressed paper. So this paper is pretty versatile. So you're seeing I'm just blending these feet out again, and it just makes them pop so much more having some of those darker shadows down there. And again, I'm just touching up his cheeks one last time, adding a bit more pigment. And then I didn't worry about going around the eyes at all because they're going to be colored in black, so it's going to cover up anything that we put underneath. So I'm just taking my black pencil and coloring right over top of them. And then I go in one last time with that water brush and I just soften out the edges of his cheeks because I want to keep a lot of the color in the middle. So I start sort of at the edges and work my way in. And then I just blend out his eye areas. And then I start working on the two yellow cookies up at the top. And again, I'm using just about the exact same colors that I am in the pot. I think I used a different darker color here just because I didn't want the cookie to look the exact same as the pot. I wanted it to look a little bit warmer, so I chose a little bit warmer colors in here. But again, I just start from my light color and then my mid-tone color here. So I'm going to fill in the rest of the cookie with this color. And I'm using that same sloppy technique because these blend out so nicely. And then I'm just starting to define some of the areas in the cookie with a little bit of a warmer dark color. And doing cakes and cookies is one of my favorite things. I started out doing animal portraits, and then I started doing some more cookies and cakes and things like that, and I fell in love with being able to get some of that texture within it. It's one of my favorite things to do, and it's super easy too. But as you can see here, I'm just layering up with another dark color, and then I'm going to go ahead and blend. Now at this point, I'm not worrying about getting a whole lot of texture into the cookie, because once we start blending it out, it's going to blend out anyway. So I'm just really looking at those base colors and the shadows that are coming from the other cookies. That's basically what I'm trying to get in right now. And then again, I just blend my lightest areas on the outside, and then I blend the rest of the cookie. Now I did the exact same thing with the other cookie that's on the top right there, and I'm just starting to look at some of the detail now. So I want to darken up some of the shadows, and then I'm just going to blend that out one last time. But I'm not blending it completely smoothly right now, so I'm sort of jumping my water brush pen around. So if I hit some of the pencil, that's great. If I miss some of it, that's totally fine, because it's going to leave a little bit of texture on the cookie because it's not completely smooth. So that's sort of one of the techniques that I use. I'll kind of jump it around and hit some areas and miss some areas, and sort of the more random you can be, the better. And then once I get this layer blended out, I go back in, and mostly on the top right cookie, because you can see a lot more of that cookie texture in there. So I'm just trying to darken up the areas where that texture is sort of receding into the cookie part. And I'm sort of, again, doing little like squiggly motions and stuff. And I kind of want to make a little random pattern because that's going to look more like cookie texture. So I'm just taking my pencil and I'm making little random marks all around the cookie where the darkest areas are going to be. And then again, I do that same technique where I hit some of the areas with the water brush and I leave some of them not blended out so that it gives a little difference between blended and more rough texture to the cookie. And you can see how the shadows in this one look a little bit different than on the jar, and that's just because I picked a little bit more warmer browns here versus the jar was a little bit cooler. And for the next video, I'll show you guys how I did the colorful cookies on top. It's just I figured this one was going to be long enough as is. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, and thank you so much for watching. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.